morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always, told out voice of radio. So today we need to complete the set, ladies and gentlemen, and by that, I mean we are looking at the third and final of the Radiant Pokemon from the Pokemon Go expansion. It's Venusaur. Now, I should actually tell you, I cannot say for certain that this is the third and final of the Radiant Pokemon from Pokemon Go. All we actually know, what we've been told, is that there are Radiant versions of both Venusaur and Blastoise and Charizard, or three of them, and I have shown you Charizard and Blastoise in the past few days. So we know that they are there, we know they are coming, this is all confirmed, all lovely and good. There could be other Radiant Pokemon. I don't think there are, incidentally, I think it's unlikely, but it does bear pointing out that it's not actually been confirmed one way or the other, so I suppose we need to be just a little bit careful. Worth pointing out, of course, that over in Japan, Radiant Eevee is actually in the set. That is not the case over here. Over here, Radiant Eevee can only be found in the special collection, but over in Japan, Radiant Eevee can actually be found in the set, which is kind of cool. That's the kind of thing you're into. So, Radiant Venusaur. And a couple people have pointed this out. The ability on this is very, very weird. So, what we've got, and I should say, I mean, this has been shared by a bunch of people. I saw it from Neon Cactus over on Twitter. And once again, what's basically happened here is that we've got a card which has just been opened in Astral Radiance. I'm not expecting many more to be coming out. I don't think the entire set has made it in, but if the other two ended up, we kind of assumed that Venusaur probably ended up in there as well. So what we've got is a really interesting ability, Sunny Bloom. Once at the end of your turn, after you attack, you may use this ability, draw cards until you have 4 cards in your hand. And that's a little bit weird. Abilities don't work after your attack, or generally they don't work after your attack. This is a very, very interesting one. But also, it's draw power on a basic Pokemon. We don't generally see draw power on a basic Pokemon. It's a very unusual thing. Now, obviously, we can look at another Radiant Pokemon. We could look at Radiant Greninja, which of course lets you discard an energy from your hand and draw 2 cards, which is honestly a really cool ability. And you do have Kricketune, which will allow you to draw until you've got 3 cards in your hand, or if it's in the active, it will draw until you've got 4 cards in your hand. Although that is a 2-prize Pokemon, you really need to try and get it in the active, etc. That will work. But here, draw till you've got 4 cards in your hand, and it activates after your attack, which is very, very weird and very, very interesting, but also very, very cool. And I really like this. I think this is a really nice ability. It's one of those ones, generally speaking, you go through your turn and you need to try and have something for next turn. You need to save something. You need to have something ready to go. Well, with this, you actually don't. Here, you can just go, well, it's fine. I can have a 0-card hand when I attack, and then I'll just draw up at the end of it. Of course, this is quite reminiscent of the supporter card Blues Tactics that said at the end of your turn, draw cards until you have 8 cards in hand. And that drew until you had 8, and that was lovely. Blues Tactics saw like no play. And the reason was extremely simple. You need your supporter during the turn. You couldn't really generally afford to play this knowing it would work out at the end of your turn. Plus, drawing till you get 8 cards in hand is great, but if your opponent drops something like an N, that would be very bad, because that would put your hand all back in. That was just too awkward, alright? It didn't really work. Well, this can. This absolutely can work. And that's kind of my point here. It's a basic Pokemon that takes up 1 bench space. So leave it on your bench knowing that, oh, I don't know, it'll be fine. I can figure it out later. And I really, really like that. Doesn't need to be in the active position, just draws you cards. Of course, I have got to point out here a card which I am extremely fond of, Greedent. This combos so well with Greedent. Now, it's not a Greedent that's actually out yet, unfortunately. It's a Greedent which is coming in our next set. But it's the one whereby you discard your entire hand, and if you discarded at least 5 cards, you do 210 damage, which is kind of awesome, but you've got to discard your entire hand to do so. And then, of course, next turn, you really need to have, at least 5 cards in hand in order to be able to use this ability properly. Hang on a second. See where we're going with this? You draw 2, got 4 cards in hand, but do remember, you will draw a card at the beginning of your next turn, so you're going to be starting next turn with 5 cards in hand, and that's going to be awesome. What is slightly sad about this Greedent was actually supposed to be, or at least could well have been, in Astral Radiance. It was in Time Gazer, which was, the equivalent set over in Japan, but unfortunately it did not make it into our set, which is very sad. It's a card I'm waiting for quite patiently. It looks really good. And if I'm ever playing a Greedent deck, you better believe I'm playing Radiant Venusaur. But it doesn't have to be for something as obvious as a Greedent deck. It could be for a million other things. And honestly, I adore Radiant Venusaur as an I don't know which Radiant Pokemon to play. If you don't know which Radiant Pokemon to play, let me tell you right now, Venusaur. Play Venusaur. Because Radiant Greninja's all well and good, right? But you need to be playing enough energy to really take advantage of it. And some decks aren't going to do so. If you're playing one of those decks, which is basically just playing like 4 double turbo energy, well, there's no way you're ever actually going to want to play Radiant Greninja. That's not going to work. You may really want to play Radiant Hawlucha because you need to do that extra 30 damage to VMAXs, but if that extra 30 damage isn't that relevant for your deck, or you don't expect to be playing against many VMAXs, this isn't really going to work. Gardevoir's the other big one which is coming. That's also coming in the next set, which it's not out yet, but that reduces damage done to your Pokemon by 20. And again, that's really, really good, but it's not always going to be that relevant. Some matchups, that minus 20 might be huge, but you might look at the matchups and go through them in your head and be like, yeah, it's just not going to be relevant enough. That's when you play Venusaur. Because we know that Roxanne's a thing right now, and from the early testing, a lot of the reports people are giving on Roxanne are very mixed, but I know it's seeing a huge amount of play. You can only use it if your opponent has 3 or fewer prize cards remaining, but you do shuffle draw 6, they do shuffle draw 2. Well, now all of a sudden, okay, fine, it's not going to help you right now because your opponent does that on their turn, then it comes to your turn. But it means that if you get stuck after a Roxanne, it's really going to be for like 1 turn, because then at the end of your next turn, Venusaur's going to help you. I should make it very clear here. It says at the end of your turn, after your attack, I'm assuming that means the attack phase. I'm assuming it means you don't have to actually attack, but there's a chance it could be ruled that way. I don't think it will be, incidentally. I would imagine this will be on the FAQ for the Pokemon Go set when Pokegym go and pop that one out. But I do think it is worth noting, it does say after your attack. I'm assuming that means attack phase, but it could mean you have to actually attack, though I don't think it will. As for the attack, 2 grass, 1 colourless, 90 damage, plus burn, plus confusion, plus poison. And on the one hand, I adore the cacophony of special conditions here. I love that burn will put extra damage, and poison will put extra damage, and confuse makes them flip to attack. It's just really expensive. And the good news is we do actually have Cherim here. So I don't think this is going to be very often, but in decks using stuff like Cherim, this is actually a really quite nice attacker, although the damage output is low. Free energy 90 damage is not good. You really are kind of relying on the special conditions, but it's not really 90. It's kind of minimum 120 time you build in poison and burn, and that could keep adding up, and if they flip tails on confusion, you've probably got on a KO. So, in a way, it's kind of good, but it's free energy, and it's 2 grass and a cut. It is a little bit awkward. But that's not really why you're playing the card. There'll be some matchups where it works, and that's lovely, but make no mistake about it, Radiant Venusaur is here for the ability, and I'm here for Radiant Venusaur's ability. It's really, really good. There are some decks where I think it is an absolute must-play, but I think it's vaulted over Radiant Greninja to become the go-to Radiant Pokemon. I think there are other Radiant Pokemon which will be better in other specific decks, don't get me wrong. But I think if you're just looking for a Radiant Pokemon and you don't really know which one you want, this. You want this. I'm giving it 5 Wassies. Venusaur generally doesn't get a huge amount of love. Well, I'm telling you right now, ladies and gentlemen, this is getting quite a bit of love from me. I kind of like this. This is awesome. But I want to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would you? Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.